Good evening. As we come on the air tonight, the Ukrainian city of Odessa is reeling from a massive Russian attack. This comes just hours after the conclusion of US-Russia talks in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The attack, a brutal display of aggression, targeted civilian infrastructure, plunging the city into darkness. Homes and businesses are without power. Heating systems are failing as temperatures plummet. Water supplies have been disrupted, leaving residents scrambling for basic necessities. This assault is a stark reminder of the human cost of this conflict. It is a deliberate targeting of innocent civilians, an attempt to break their spirit and cripple their resilience. The images emerging from Odessa are heartbreaking. Families huddled together for warmth, hospitals struggling to function, and a city grappling with the chaos. The attack on Odessa is not just an attack on Ukraine. It is an attack on the very idea of a rules-based international order. It is a blatant disregard for diplomacy and a clear escalation of the conflict. The timing of this attack, so soon after the US-Russia talks, raises serious questions about Russia's commitment to finding a peaceful resolution. The world is watching, and we must ask ourselves, how long will we tolerate these acts of aggression? When will we say enough is enough? The recent US-Russia talks, while raising hopes for a diplomatic solution, have also drawn sharp criticism from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy expressed deep concern over Ukraine's exclusion from the talks, arguing that any discussion about his country's future must include its own leadership. He argued that the talks merely resurrected early Russian ultimatums, demands that Ukraine relinquish territory in exchange for a ceasefire. Zelenskyy's criticism highlights a crucial point. This war cannot be resolved through backroom deals or concessions made at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty. The Ukrainian people have shown incredible courage and determination in defending their homeland, and they deserve a seat at the negotiating table. Furthermore, Zelenskyy directly addressed former President Trump's recent comments on the conflict, dismissing his claims as Russian disinformation. Trump, in a series of provocative statements, claimed to have the power to end the war, while simultaneously blaming Ukraine for the conflict. He also made unsubstantiated claims about Zelenskyy's approval rating, alleging it stood at a meager 4%. Zelenskyy categorically rejected these claims, labeling them as attempts to sow discord and undermine Ukrainian unity. He emphasized that his administration remains committed to defending Ukrainian sovereignty and would not yield to ultimatums or threats regardless of their source. Former President Trump's recent pronouncements on the war in Ukraine have sent shockwaves through the international community. His assertions, often contradictory and laced with misinformation, have raised concerns about his understanding of the conflict and his motives for wading into such a sensitive issue. Trump's claim that he could single-handedly end the war, while characteristically grandiose, ignores the complexities of the situation. The conflict involves not just Ukraine and Russia, but a complex web of geopolitical actors and interests. His assertion that Ukraine initiated the conflict is patently false, a dangerous distortion of reality that plays into Russian propaganda narratives. Even more alarming are Trump's comments about Zelenskyy, whom he labeled a dictator without elections. This baseless accusation, devoid of any factual basis, further undermines international efforts to support Ukraine. Trump went on to suggest that Ukraine should have negotiated with Moscow earlier, implying that the current situation is somehow Zelenskyy's fault. This ignores the fact that Russia illegally annexed Crimea in 2014 and has been actively fueling the conflict in eastern Ukraine for years. Perhaps most troubling is Trump's demand for a hefty payment in exchange for U.S. support. He called for Ukraine to hand over $500 billion worth of its rare earth minerals, a demand he framed as compensation for American aid. This transactional approach to foreign policy, prioritizing personal gain over national interests, is deeply concerning. In the face of Russian aggression and Trump's inflammatory rhetoric, President Zelenskyy has remained a beacon of strength and resilience. He has rallied his people, galvanized international support, and refused to bow to pressure. His response to Trump's demands was firm and unequivocal, not serious. Zelenskyy rejected the notion of bartering away Ukrainian resources for an unspecified agreement, emphasizing that Ukraine's sovereignty is not negotiable. He highlighted the sacrifices made by the Ukrainian people, who are fighting not just for their own freedom but for the principles of democracy and self-determination. Zelenskyy also addressed the issue of U.S. support, acknowledging that while the U.S. has provided significant military and humanitarian aid, concrete security guarantees remain elusive. He stressed the urgent need for continued Western support, particularly in the form of advanced weaponry and air defense systems to counter Russia's military advantage. Zelenskyy's message was clear: Ukraine will not be bullied into submission. He remains committed to defending his country's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and he expects the international community to stand by Ukraine's side. Amidst the escalating tensions and the devastating attack on Odessa, a glimmer of hope emerged from the U.S.-Russia talks, an agreement to appoint special representatives to continue peace negotiations. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov characterized the atmosphere of the talks as positive, while Russian President Vladimir Putin expressed willingness to meet with former President Trump. Following the talks, Trump's envoy, Keith Kellogg, arrived in Kiev for discussions with Ukrainian leaders. The goal of these discussions is to explore potential avenues for de-escalation and to find a negotiated solution to the conflict. While any effort to pursue a peaceful resolution is welcome, skepticism remains high. The international community has witnessed broken promises and failed ceasefires before. The recent attack on Odessa, a clear violation of international law, casts a long shadow over these diplomatic efforts. The scale and brutality of the Russian attack on Odessa are difficult to comprehend. The numbers paint a chilling picture of the onslaught faced by innocent civilians. According to Ukrainian officials, Russia unleashed a barrage of 167 drones and 2 Iskander ballistic missiles, targeting critical infrastructure throughout the city. Ukrainian air defenses, stretched thin but resolute, managed to intercept 106 of the incoming projectiles. However, the sheer volume of the attack overwhelmed their capabilities, resulting in widespread damage to power stations, water treatment plants, and heating systems. The attack, occurring during a period of freezing winter temperatures, has exacerbated the suffering of Odessa's residents. Hospitals are struggling to cope with power outages and dwindling supplies. Families are huddled together for warmth, their homes plunged into darkness. The psychological toll of the attack, coming on the heels of months of relentless bombardment, is immeasurable. As the dust settles on the wreckage of Odessa, the path forward remains uncertain. The U.S.-Russia talks, while offering a sliver of hope, have done little to alleviate the immediate suffering of the Ukrainian people. President Zelenskyy's skepticism about the negotiations is understandable. He has seen firsthand Russia's willingness to violate agreements and break promises. The international community must remain resolute in its support for Ukraine. This includes providing continued military aid, strengthening sanctions against Russia, and holding those responsible for war crimes accountable. The Ukrainian people have shown incredible courage and resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. They deserve our unwavering support. The fight for Ukraine is a fight for democracy, for freedom, and for the very soul of Europe. We cannot, and we must not, let them down. That is all the time we have tonight. We'll continue to follow this developing story and bring you updates as they become available.